What's going on, everyone? Hello, and welcome back to Sunday Civics. I'm your host and civics teacher, Eljoy Williams. And joining me for this very special mini episode of the First Civic Action series are one of my favorite couples in podcastdom. I think that's how the word is said. I don't know. I'll look it up. But Rod and Karen from The Black Guy Who Tips. Hey, y'all.
How you doing?
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
I'm not fancy yet. I don't have like hand claps or like applause or anything on my soundboard yet, so I'm just gonna clap in my studio for you guys for joining me. So
thank you for having us.
No problem.
I feel like Karen and I feel so underqualified to be on this show.
Right. I was like, because we talking about Eljoy show. I was like, now you know, I don't even know now. She sure she picked the right people?
Well, the Sunday Civics main show, we're talking to experts about civic education and about politics. But, one of the themes of the show, one of the things I tell people about the show is that civic participation is not just for people with political science PhDs, right? So in order to be self-governing, you have to participate in some way. And I feel like you guys participate in the civic and political space. And I want to demonstrate to people that you don't have to watch all of the news shows every day and talk about politics 24/7 and all of that. You can still be an engaged citizen and you can even do ratchet things and be an engaged citizen. You can, it's possible. It compares to my statement that everything doesn't have to be uplifting to the race. Right. Yeah. In terms of you can just want to do ratchet stuff with your friends on the weekends. Even though your day-to-day job may be, fighting racial discrimination or something like that, but you can still want to do hood rat things with your friends.
That's true.
So you can live a balanced life, people.
Yes.
So for this mini episode, I'm asking some of my favorite podcast hosts, what was your first civic action? So I'm going to start with, because I'm partial to Black women, I'm going to start with Karen. Karen, what was your first civic action?
I don't know if this counts as a civic action, but I think my very first civic action was I was in the 9th grade, and I actually ran for student council president. And I really didn't think I was going to get it. And I was surprised that I won. And, people voted, went through the voting process. They counted the votes. And I remember what was happening. I happened to actually be in my kind of social studies / civics class when the announcement was made. And I was just shocked and surprised. And that year we got so much accomplished. We got a lot done. And so that was kind of my first civic, quote unquote, as far as politic relationship. We didn't last long. That ended it, but yeah.
Well, that definitely counts though, because right now, the going theme is everybody's asking everybody to run for office, which is great. We need more people in the process. We need more people as leaders, particularly women. We need to elect more women to office, and it's great. But if everybody gonna run for office, what's gonna happen with the other stuff that need to happen? And running for student council, even though you may think that it's not a civic action because it doesn't pertain to our larger society, certainly you had an impact and made decisions on what happened in your individual school and with even if it was a class president, your individual class, right? So that definitely counts as a first civic action, and it taught you a lesson, right? That you can engage, you can speak up, you can run for office, no matter how small the position may be in comparison to the rest of the world, and still make a difference. Did it also get you extra French fries or tater tots in school?
I think it did. I think I became more popular. I didn't even realize that many people knew who I was. because you do it and you just kind of I just throw my hat in the ring, quote unquote. And a lot of people, I was more popular than I thought, and I think that kind of shaped me helped me grow into the vocal person that I am today.
Definitely. And that's a lesson for other people who may be considering running for office, whether they're, local positions or even in Congress, is that, you don't know how many people are listening to you or value your opinion or that you can speak for until you throw your hat in the ring. And thank God that you did, because now we have this lovely vocal voice for all of us. Thanks, Karen. So, Rod, what was your first civic action?
I would still say just registering to vote and going to vote my first time, because my parents were really big advocates about Black people voting. My mom still texts me every single time that there's
an election,
local, state, or federal election. She texts me every time and asks, have I voted yet? And I'm always like, yep, like, let me go. If I haven't, I'm like, I'm about to. And if I have, I'm like, I already took care of it. So I would say that was my first, like, civil action, but my parents just kept me, like, really aware, especially as a Black person, about, how much we need to know about politics in order to just navigate this system.
And shout out to mamas and Black mamas everywhere who consistently even text their grown kids. There's in organizing and doing work for candidates, right? That's who I target on campaigns. If I know if I can target a Black woman over the age of 30, she will not only herself go to vote, but everybody in her household. And if it's a Black woman over the age of 50, it's not only her household, but the other members of her family as well. Like, I target them, mamas like yours, in order to pull people out for an election for a candidate.
Yeah, I recently got to the point where because of what I do for a living, I can, like, early vote, like, a little earlier than other people.
Right.
So I'll coordinate with Karen, like, okay, this is the day we're going to early vote or whatever. And then I'll text my mom just to have the one up to be like, oh, so you voted yet? Because, I mean, you only got 27 days left.
Why do we do stuff like that to our mothers? I got yelled at
via
text message recently.
It's a good lesson,
Yes. I got yelled at via text message. You know that, I don't know if you watch Family Guy or you've seen that clip of Stewie calling his mother over and over again. Like, mom, mommy, ma. Just like over and over again, and she's not answering. Yes. So I recently did that to my mother via text because she wasn't answering. So it's just like, ma, mommy, mother, mama, just like via text. And via text, I could hear her yelling. She, in all caps, responds, "What, Joy? People are working. What is it that you want?" So yeah, I co-sign trying to one up your mom or aggravate your mom every now and then. It keeps them healthy, keeps them young. But when faced with was it an event or was it a day that your parents or your mom took you to go register? Did somebody just have a voter registration form and just gave it to you, say fill it out, or how do you remember how you actually registered?
Yeah, well, see, I was in the academically gifted programs and all that stuff, so I graduated at 17. So I was in college, actually, when I turned 18. And I remember our Fayetteville State, my school, they had if you want to go register to vote, you can go to this office, fill out these forms, and they'll send you like your voter registration. And I remember, and you could also in North Carolina register the same day and vote. So I did I filled out my form early, but my birthday's in September, and I didn't get my stuff back by November for the election. So then I just had to go and vote at the local polls. But I was in their registry or whatever. I just didn't have my card at the time, but it was really easy. I felt like I was going to be intimidated. I felt like they were going to say, because I'm a very inside, I'm a very pessimistic person. So I was sure that they would just like pull me out to the side as soon as I stepped in line and be like, "What are you doing here?" But I got the vote and everything was fine. They had me on the register and everything, and that was even with the fact that I registered in Fayetteville, which was like 3 hours from where I actually lived my whole life in Charlotte. So it was extremely easy compared to what I thought it would be in my mind. And plus, I had these black parents that were very pro-black, so they were always like telling me like, people die for your right to vote, and don't you listen to them? If they tell you can't vote, you say this, that, and that. So I was like ready for war, but it was very easy.
And certainly with the news, with voter ID and the while on the one hand we need to know all of the laws and the different voter suppression tactics that are used, it also gives you the impression that there's like some big redneck guy with a gun standing like and gonna give you a test to what like that those things still exist, and that it's so hard for people. That's the visual I think that people have, that there's going to be some problem or I'm gonna have to march or overcome for me individually to register. And while I don't want to downplay that there are voter suppression tactics happening, that it's not that scary, because I go into schools and talk to young people about it, and they're like, well, if I do this, will somebody come and get me? Well, there's this fear about registering to even participate.
Yeah, in 2012 we were in line to vote. And I remember one of the people that worked at the polls is a white dude.
Giving out wrong information.
And he gave out some wrong information. And right before, it was like, he was probably like 3 or 4 people ahead of line. And before I could even say something, these black women were like, you first of all, if you're in line, you can register today and vote today. No, you don't need an ID. No, like, because he was like,
you giving out false information.
Right. And he was like working there. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like,
just be quiet and look at the line.
Yeah, they got him together, but but yeah, you're right. That's in all my years of voting, that's the closest I ever came to seeing like quote unquote any level of intimidation. And the intimidation in that case isn't, like you said, it's not a guy with a shotgun or whatever. It's just a person giving wrong information to make you doubt yourself, to make you go, is this worth even the hassle of this? Let me just go home and forget about it. And, that's to me, the biggest deterrent is trying to convince people with misinformation. In our state, North Carolina, last year, it was really crucial because so much misinformation was floating about that I feel like, especially black people, because we were targeted, but black people especially had to feel intimidated to even go vote. Like, what is the point? Because they're limiting our early hours. They don't have.
Do I need to have my ID? Do I don't need to have my ID? Because what happened was that they tried to pass a law. It got struck down. They've been going back and forth about it, but so many people heard it the first time, like, well, fuck it, I got to have my ID.
Are you keeping up with the legal battles in court?
Right.
What about when they get rid of Sunday voting, which is when a lot of black people's churches go with their buses to go vote?
They got rid of same day voting.
Same day, like some people got rid of same day registration and voting. Like so yeah, it was. I mean, at least those are the things that people were being led to believe. What happened was most of that never went into effect. They still like limited hours. They still found some, limited early voting, but still, if you went to vote, it was the exact same process as it's always been.
Right.
And yet there were people intimidated from turning out.
Yep. Yeah. And people often forget that the people who work the polls, while the managers and their staff and on the larger level, the Secretary of State or, Secretary of Elections are full-time staff people, majority of the people that are working on election day are temporary seasonal workers that, are just taking the job to do it for the day. Here in New York City, I actually train poll workers, and we train them in July and August for working the primary in September and working the election in November. So, I have to train you, and the training is, 4 hours, sometimes 6 hours, right? So you get 4 6-hour training to work one day. And then so these are not like professional. And so in terms of people giving wrong information, I mean, I see it here in people I've trained who are giving wrong information, and it's like, I'm here, I'm getting $200, to work for the day. And I'm going to be here all day, until the polls close. So some of it is, deliberate tactics to dissuade certain populations from voting. Another part of it is that you're paying this retired woman to sit here from 5 in the morning until the polls close at 9 here, and then making sure to wrap up, and she getting $200. I got a training in the summer that I'm using information until September or November. Do I really remember all of this? Right? So there's also that flaw in the system, and people just giving wrong information because that's just what they're giving you at the moment. They can say one thing to you and something else to somebody else, and people don't realize that. Like, that's an idea of civic participation in terms of being a poll worker and working an election. But what's the average age of the person you see running, working at your poll when you go?
They're old, like literally everybody. Like they retired, because a lot of them be struggling. They not on technology. Not trying to funny. A lot of them aren't computer savvy. A lot of them, hold on, wait a minute, I got the wrong book. Come back, wait a minute. What's your name again? Give me that. Like, you got to deal with a lot sometimes.
Listen, I will say this, guys. Okay, they are old, but I have not found them to be like inefficient or bad at it. That white dude wasn't even old. He was just wrong. I don't even know what his problem was. He's the only poll worker that I've run into that's been like that. Like, everybody else was like, because he was loud and wrong. But everybody else has been like, maybe like, they're older and it might take them a second. But a lot of stuff with voting, they're not really using computers like. When you get there, they're not typing your name in or anything. They're looking through a manual paper roll and stuff. The main issues I've really had are just, I think, mentally feeling like, okay, am I overwhelmed? You get there, they hand you a long sheet. There's somebody telling you who you should vote for outside. There's
run up to you with papers and things like that. I'm used to it now, but sometimes you have to tell them people to leave you alone. I just want to vote. I already got my mind made up.
Right. So those are the only types of like, quote unquote, that like, that's the only type of like experience I've had where I felt a little bit like, oh man, this is a lot, But at the same time, it's like, it just taught me, go up there with a plan, look, research before you go up there, so you feel like these are the names, because there's certain positions like judges that don't have a D or R next to them or whatever. Like, if you don't
Google,
if you don't know something, like, that can be intimidating. So I feel like it's once you go once, I feel like it's from that point on, it's like, I just need a strategy when I walk in. I need to know who I want to vote for and all that stuff, because you can't look on your phone. You have, and like I said, you're not going to figure it out talking to people in line a lot of times, because they don't know any better than you do. So that's the thing I would focus on.
Fast forwarding until now, part of the goal of this show is to talk about civics and civic participation in a way that doesn't make it feel like civics is just something you read in a textbook, but it's actions that you engage in on a daily basis. What are some of the things that you observe about civic participation in politics right now?
I think for me, the biggest thing that I've kind of learned is that people don't listen. There are people who their whole life is dedicated to this. Like, they got PhDs in it, their doctorates in it, and a lot of times these people come up with information, but a lot of times people live in these, truth be told, ignorant bubbles where they don't want to learn and they don't listen, and that's a problem, because when somebody comes to you with what the facts are, a lot of people just tune it out and don't listen. And I think that becomes a problem. I think, in my opinion, civics is very boring to most people. Most people are introduced to some forms of civics. I don't know. They've kind of changed it, so they don't teach civics as much as they used to and as much depth as they used to in the school system. But it's very boring, and so a lot of people zone out. So you have a lot of uneducated people in this field, when it comes to this, and then they don't listen.
Right?
Yeah. For me, I would say the way people talk to each other has become just so toxic that sometimes it's almost pointless to engage in discussion. I think social media is kind of aided in the fact that we see each other as very very disposable. Like, if I don't like what you're saying, if I don't like what you're doing, I can block you. So people just kind of approach things with a belligerent attitude. And I think there's a faction of people online that have kind of really started to, not started, but have really been like, don't tone police me. It doesn't matter how you talk to people. This is how I feel and stuff. And while, that might make people feel better online and stuff, it's really destructive to discourse if you claim to want to convince people, to sort of see your side of things. Like when we first learned about communication, part of the things we learned is about tone. Part of the things we learned is about our word choice and stuff. And I feel like that's what happens in a lot of these engagements about civics, about how government processes work, about how different theories and approaches to politics work. People are so dismissive and so condescending that I feel like most of the engagement online is almost wasteful. When because of how it starts, as opposed to me being like, if you were to say something like, did y'all know you can't vote on the same day in North Carolina, which is wrong. You still can register and vote on the same day.
You can.
Instead of approaching you and being like, see, this is what's wrong with black people or something crazy like that, I can just be like, oh, no, that's not, have you looked at this link or have you seen that? That kind of thing I think is, that at least that's one of my biggest frustrations is just how people talk, because there are people who have the information. And they could be using this information and like informing folks, but instead they're kind of like using it to be mean to people, and it doesn't seem like that's helping at all.
Yeah, and one more thing too, I think that because the way our educational system is, lack of knowledge is common when it comes to this. So I think that words mean things. So a lot of times I think that, like Roger said, some people have the knowledge, but they don't know and they don't have good tactics sometimes in how to disperse it to the mass where it is actually received properly.
Yeah, I definitely feel both of you on the toxic nature of just communication. And earlier today, after I was coming home from church, I was talking to folks I had brunch with, and, just talking to them about just even me going on TV shows. I'm starting to think about like, well, what are people really gaining from, me giving my opinion? I try to go on the shows and give a different angle or a different conversation, because I feel like everything is just repetitive, right? And particularly from a news and media standpoint, it's just the same thing over and over again. And so I try to do things where I bring a different perspective that people may not be thinking about, or a different viewpoint, or, something like that. But people really want to see the friction. The friction, the fighting. They want you to be black girl sassy and say girl bye, and they're looking for that type of engagement, because that's entertainment now, instead of education or listening to hear somebody's viewpoint. I mean, I engage with people all the time that I don't necessarily agree with, and the conversation can just like completely change into insults and stuff. And I was like, wait, what? Wait. How do we get here? Yeah. Like, I was just telling you that this is how this actually works, and things like that. It's interesting you think that way. Here's why I think this way, and then it's just like, you're an idiot, and and I'm like, hey, man.
I feel like once news kind of went to the like bring two people on the fight,
right?
Like angle, it kind of changed everything. Because it became more about the entertainment. When you look you're watching the news and you see 6 boxes and they all have different people in there yelling. It's not, no one's really being educated or learning anything. It's almost like sports. You're just rooting for your side to win,
right,
with the people that you already agree with. And I think that's a huge part of it. And when it comes to online interaction, I think people mimic that, but that's not my thing. Like, I'm just not into that, and I've learned so much from people because I don't know everything, and I'm quick to admit that, because I feel like once you start feeling like you know everything, there's nothing left to say or do, you know?
Right.
And I learn stuff and I hear, and I want to understand, especially people I respect. I want to hear their perspective, because a lot of times I either learn something like for myself, or I just learn like, well, this is another way to view that. I remember there was an interaction me and Eldre had when she was talking about, I think it was Obama, and like Keith Ellison was saying something about how like, a lot of this 2016 was basically Obama's fault because he hadn't done enough for the rest of the party and da 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 da. And I was, you know, of course, I vehemently disagree. Like, come on, dog. Like, I still remember people running away from him, blah blah blah. But then Eldre brought up some like kind of inside baseball stuff about like sponsoring and funding and stuff, and like stuff that I just I was not privy to.
Right.
You know, and it didn't turn into like, well, since this point is not the point I want to make, Eldre, you stupid, and we can't be friends. Like, it was like, all right, well, I learned something. I didn't know that, you know, and they're like, it's not what Keith Ellison said at the time, but it's still, I learned something from it, from Eldroy's perspective, you know. So I appreciate that kind of interaction, and it didn't devolve into insults or, you know, we not cool no more. Right. Like, I'm not going to dismiss you because we do, you know, and I think that's what's missing from a lot of this interaction.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, thank you so very much for joining me for this episode. The goal of this is to demonstrate to people that there are many ways to be civically engaged. And I think through you guys' show, even the times when you talk about politics or other thing that's going on around you, maybe locally or nationally, that you contribute to giving, you know, some information about being civically engaged. And certainly I see your conversations, and as Brad was saying, engage the conversations often online. So thank you very much for joining me this afternoon as part of this first Civic Action series. And I hope to be on your show, a non-ratchet version of your show, at some point in the near future.
You know what? We're gonna de-ratchetify the show and make that happen for you, Eldroy. We're gonna find a way.
We will tone it down.
We're
just
gonna
for you.
Find a way to make that happen. We got you.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.